Hi, Jeff Smith. We are just delighted to be able to interview you because you've had such a long experience at USG.
Almost as long as Barbara's.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
We were classmates.
so your classmates like in the Sunday school.
And actually, I took her to my junior prom.
Really? She never told me you were
Yes.
romantically linked.
Well, I don't think we were. In our senior year, she was more interested in a guy who was at Penn Charter than me.
Oh, okay.
But yes,
Well, you didn't feel rejected or anything like
um, well, maybe a little bit, but it wasn't serious.
that. You're able to move on.
We were both really involved with liberal religious youth in the LRY, in the Delaware Valley group.
So how did you get involved with the liberal causes? How was that? How did that come about with you?
Well, I don't know that was that liberal actually. I am embarrassed to say that in one regard that in 1963 or whatever the election was, no, I guess it was 1960 when Nixon was running for president.
Right.
I was a Nixon person.
Oh,
Barbara was Kennedy was running at that time.
right.
Nixon, Kennedy. Yeah, I wasn't really Kennedy person that I recall.
Well, do you remember why or
No.
no?
I've been pretty. I regard myself as pretty moderated in terms of politics, and I spend a lot of time thinking about stuff. I feel this whole racism issue has been making me think a lot. My father and my grandfather were involved in real estate, so I have some wondering, like, well, I know my mother was very liberal, but I don't know what my father's politics were, except that he was always very good with all kinds of people, and he graduated from Germantown High School himself. He was very supportive of me at Germantown High School, which was at that time about 25% black, 75% white. My brother went there, and in 3 years it switched. It was about 75% black and 25% white. 3 years later, but
But did you notice in your father's real estate work any difference about where black people and where white people lived?
Well, see, I wasn't really aware of who was buying or what. That's what I'm saying. I don't really know anything about what his business was.
But did you live in a white neighborhood or a black neighborhood?
Well, I lived on Harvey Street. I'm just up here, it was basically all white. I don't think we had any black folks on the street. My parents bought their house in 1943 or 1944. I don't remember. I don't remember if when black folks moved in, or even how many are there right now. I haven't been on the street for a long time, so I don't know.
So you really just grow up and you're in a community and you just don't notice what the situation is around you.
Well, I went
Because
to
you are so well privileged.
maybe. Well, except that I went to Germantown High School and I ran on the track team, and I was a definite minority on the track team.
And did you feel that you were pretty good at track, or there were people who were better?
I was not the best on the track team.
Was a black person who was very good, or?
Well, I ran on a 2-mile relay team. I ran a half mile, and I was usually the first or second, which left some time for us to catch up if we were behind. No, I didn't feel. One of my best friends into Germantown. In Germantown, after I moved back to the city, was John Green, guy who was ran on the track team. I don't really. race was not so much of an issue. Our orchestra was integrated. I mean, Germantown. I mean, it was integrated high school.
Right.
I also realized just recently when I started going back to Lingelbach. I was at Lingelbach when they first opened the school, and I thought that the school was more white then than I learned that it was. 2 years ago, a librarian, or rather a technology teacher, found some old archives, and there were teacher-made scrapbooks from the classes in 1957 and 1958. It was half black. I was surprised. I had thought, my memory was that Lingelbach was more white than that.
Well, I'm just wondering, because it seems like there's just no awareness of white privilege. And it seems like it starts very early because you are given all these privileges and you just consider that that's the way things are. And you're not really, don't notice what's happening to people around you. I was thinking about the way I look at people who are handicapped. Did I pay any attention to them or their condition? I wonder if I did. Because I think, well, this is how people who are in the majority here in this country feel about their position. And they don't really notice what's happening to other people around them. Because in your father's office, did he have any black people working, or?
Well, in all fairness, he didn't have anybody working for him.
Oh, okay.
It was pretty much a one-man office.
Okay.
He was over on Maplewood Avenue and just off Germantown Avenue, and I mean, he brought home notary forms, and I filled in the spaces that were supposed to be read. Yeah.
Oh, you were his secretary.
Yeah, he was a.
Well, what were the major issues in the community at the time? We're talking about a time when there was a lot of upheaval, and when you were in high school, you were in high school during what years?
I graduated '64.
There was a lot going on in the '60s.
There was, but as I said, I was pretty much not as, for example, compared to Barbara, I was not as politically active. My mother was at the 1963 March on Washington. I don't remember why I didn't go, but I wasn't there. I was a good student. I spent most of my time in school. My social life was the liberal religious youth in high school. One of the reasons why I really haven't put myself out there for these interviews is I don't feel as if I was, a very notable activist.
Well, I can understand that, but I just wondered if you were aware at all of what the issues were, or when did you first become aware that there were issues around race in Philadelphia? Because this was a hotbed. They had the riots.
Yeah, well, I wasn't living in Philadelphia. I was in Ohio for college. I spent 1966-67 during the Vietnam War. I was in Paris, and I was pretty much absorbed with surviving French in Paris. So I knew that Americans weren't very welcome there because of the Vietnam War. But I really was not connected to race, and I wasn't connected to them. When I came back to the States, I moved to Los Angeles. I was at Pomona College. I was more involved with the hippie movement than I was with race. It was more like a drug culture that I was involved with, or not involved with. I also stayed pretty much out of the drug culture. I got involved in educational alternatives which was not so much minority or black-oriented schools, but people who were running any kind of an alternative school.
Right.
And that's what I got involved in, was non-commercial radio and educational experiments.
WBAI and that kind of thing.
Well, the WBAI was in New York, but
They had in Los Angeles.
KPFA was
That's
where
right.
where it all started,
Mhm.
and then KPFK in Los Angeles. But yeah,
Mhm.
I got my start at a station in Los Gatos, California, that was owned by a guy who got his start at KPFA.
Mhm.
Speaking of handicapped, he was a polio victim who was rich,
Oh.
and he spent his money on bringing both music and political issues to the airwaves.
The area. Okay. All right. So, but those radio stations were very much involved with the racial climate, though, don't you think? KPFA.
Yeah, but I was not involved with KPFA.
Okay. All right. So you were mostly. It was mostly about the hippie movement. Then.
Yeah, I'm sorry to, and I'm not sorry to say, I have to say that I'm basically a moderate.
Mhm.
I did reporting. I mean, and I did non-commercial radio,
Mhm.
where I interviewed all kinds of people,
Mhm.
but I was not trying to skewer people. When I interviewed people, I was trying to get to know them, and I haven't been in really advocacy journalism at all. I mean, the media that I started a radio station in Pittsburgh,
Mhm.
but I wasn't the politician.
Mhm.
I did more of the music and feature kind of
Mhm.
broadcasting.
But no music. What kind of music did you do? I mean, were there blacks involved in the music that you did?
Well, I played a lot of African folk music. I played Latin American, South American
Mhm.
folk music. It's not black, but that would be, Latin.
A lot of black in the Latin. A lot of black in the Latin.
Yeah, but in South American, it's not so much black as it is. Our Incas, they're
No, their
native.
music. Oh, you're
They're
talking-
Native
okay,
Americans.
Incas, yeah, okay.
The Peruvian music, panpipes, those are not black. Those
No,
are.
they are. They are.
I was interested in Eastern European music.
Mhm.
That's not black, but it's also not American.
It's ethnic
It's
music,
ethnic
though.
music, yeah.
It's ethnic music.
Um,
Okay.
So that was more of my passion.
So that you can say that your experience here at USG has been just to be absorbed in the work of the church, but that you never made any differences, you never experienced any differences about how they behave toward other people, like blacks or other.
Yeah, not really. I took your remark about being. I have been more influenced myself with the gay and lesbian influx or influence in our society as well as at the church than for me that's been African Americans. I find it frustrating that we don't have more blacks in the church, but I take it's because our religion is not appealing to a lot of black people. Like you said, we don't save people.
That's true.
You know,
You can't go ahead.
and so that's one of the things I've taken out of this whole series of interviews is how do we get black people in the area more interested in Unitarians or our congregation. Well, we can't do anything more than we would any other person, regardless of their skin color. I mean, they've got to be interested in what
Okay.
Unitarians do.
They have to be interested in
Yeah.
philosophy.
Yeah, they have, and that's not related to skin color.
So that when we have groups like our the work that we're doing with in the Ending Racism Committee with the returning citizens or the people who were formerly incarcerated, when we talk about that kind of thing, where do you stand on that? Do you feel that we should, since there are so many black people who are involved in that, How did you feel about that? Were you here when we had our last teaching?
No.
No, you weren't. Okay, well, that was like startling to some of the people here because we have so many black people here.
When you say, was I here or did I attend it?
Did you attend it?
I did not attend it. I think I was in Philadelphia. That wasn't that long ago, was it?
No, the 30th. It was in November
Yeah.
13th.
No, I didn't attend it. I forget why. Or I just didn't.
Okay, well, because it made quite an impact on the church because of the numbers of black people we brought here, and who they were, how they behaved, and there was some feeling that. So I've heard it expressed that this church has a feeling about the kinds of black people who come here, whether or not you are educated or whether or not, are you street, what kind of a black person is coming to this church?
I'm uncomfortable with a lot of street culture. I like skinheads. I don't feel comfortable with white extremists. I don't feel comfortable with black extremists. I just don't relate to that aspect of the culture. My son, on the other hand, much more over his lifetime, has been much more connected with that. He got more into rap, for example.
Oh, okay.
Than,
I'm not comfortable with that either.
He and his white Jewish friend had did rap for a while. They did rap together. My son went to Cheney University. My son's married to an African.
Oh, really?
Which has been, when you talk about white privilege, since they've had 4 children, it's put me through a lot of thinking too, as to what's that going to mean for not so much my future, but for their future. My son married a Muslim.
Oh,
So,
he really did.
so I mean, there's all kinds of things that, in terms of my cultural awareness, my exposure to white privilege, I mean, it gets very complicated. My daughter-in-law, she's working in Comcast. She left Morgan State University, walked into a job at Goldman Sachs, making more money than I ever made in the public education. Is she going to be limited by white privilege? I mean, some people say, yeah, she's going to, just because she's black, she's going to be limited by white privilege.
She's an exception.
Well, I don't know.
Well, there's an exception in this country where we feel that Africans are privileged.
Oh, you mean,
As
yeah,
far-
you're saying
More than
Africans, yeah,
Africans more than native-born blacks.
right.
And we do find that because they say that they come without all the baggage, whereas black people come with a chip on their shoulder.
And she has,
Black Americans come with a chip on their shoulder, and they're more difficult to work with. Now, there was a lot of that during the 60s and 70s, and you would experience that. And I've had Africans who said, I have an African who's a friend who's he's was a vice president in this very big corporation, and he definitely says that they chose him for his original position because he wasn't black, wasn't an African American, and he wanted to integrate. This was when he first had this job that he had in New York, and it happened. So there is that too, because there's some other kinds of privileges.
You asked the question about how do I feel about any particular kind of black person here at the church. I kind of feel like it's self-selecting. It goes back to that cultural thing. I mean, I don't know that we're going to attract, an African American, a black street kid, black street kid to come here. They're going to have some kind of, a black person coming here because it's an intellectual church. It is an intellectual church. They're going to have some kind of, if not formal education, they're going to have some sort of enlightened thinking.
I think that too. I think that's certainly one of the reasons that I am involved, because it does take a kind of enlightenment to appreciate a lot of the things that you talk about. If you start talking about your interest in Pluto, my sister, when I talked to my sister about it, she says, "Oh, I don't want to know about that." And I said, "You haven't been Oh no, my sister doesn't want to know." And I said, "Well, why don't you want to know about it?" "Oh, it becomes too much." What she's saying is, there's no way to explain heaven if you talk about Pluto and all those other galaxies out there. You start talking about that.
Yeah.
And she doesn't want to. She doesn't want to do that.
I think that my experience with this church has always been that it's made me think. It's made me change ideas that I've had. Whatever they were, it's made me reconsider ideas that I've had, and then have to deal with them. I mean, I'm my latest is I was looking at the welcoming plaque that we have downstairs, which needs to be revised already.
What does it say?
It says we welcome gay, lesbian, and
Transgender.
no, transgender's not on there. That's what I'm saying. It needs to be revised because since that was issued, there's a new exception.
That's right.
To the norm that we've had.
Right.
And so, and I'm still wrapping my head around the idea of transgender.
Well, that's what
it's
Caitlyn Jenner is going to try to make you do.
Yeah, but I mean, it's as much my wrapping my head around that as many people wrapping their head around the gay or lesbian relationship. I mean, I've had to get used to the idea that it's natural for homosexual relationships to take place.
Well, I had to evolve with
Yeah,
that too.
it's
not something that I came to from childhood because we had certain really strong prejudices against anybody who was one of them. I remember reading the book. The first book I ever read was. I just had the book. Anyway, I can't think of the name of it. Oh, I remember I read it when I was in college. We were passing this book around, and this woman was writing about her relationship with another woman, and I could not fathom that. I mean, I hated to dance with a girl because, she felt funny, and I wanted to dance with a boy. He was hard.
Well, and I have to, and then I also have to accept that it's okay to be heterosexual.
Yeah.
I mean, that if you're born, whatever way you're born, is the way you should feel comfortable being.
It's true. And you had to accept the fact that there are homosexual animals. So it's not that they have any kind of mental, they've made any kind of decision. Because people, would say to me, "Oh, I don't like their lifestyle." And I'd say, it's not a lifestyle. I don't want to hear that because that's not true. Because in the Baptist church, they still talk about lifestyle. And we know better. So anyway, so you're one of the people who would be a welcoming person here in this church to black people who came because you feel no difference. Or do you feel a difference?
I think I can't say that I don't see difference in color, but I don't feel a revulsion is the word that wants to come out. I don't feel that. I do react more to personalities. So yeah, I hope I'm a
Well, let's see
welcoming person.
how you work with the people who are doing various tasks here, like the people who are doing the recording and working with the electronics and like that. I don't see any difference. Do you feel that the church itself is evolving to be where you are at your place?
I hope so. I mean, I feel that since Kent has been here, things have really changed. I mean, as far as like Kent has been open with his alcoholism, I mean that's another population that needs to be welcomed into the church, and there's a lot of them in society. What was your question?
Do you feel the church is evolving as far as their
Yeah.
being open?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think just the fact we've got, a lesbian mother of black children speaking at church this Sunday. I mean, I'm curious.
Yeah, that's going to be very
it's-
interesting because of the great things that she's done with those kids. They really, those children have come a long way with
Yeah,
their.
I don't know her kids very well.
I know the kids very well because I knew them when they first came and how they were, and I spent a lot of time talking with them and sitting with them, especially with the girl. And they've done a fabulous job. I really want to hear what she has to say. So that we do see something evolving here, and I do see a change in the pews too with who comes, and some people who have who come here when they used to go somewhere else. Especially some people who come regularly from Restoration to this church. So, I mean, I'm aware of it.
Okay, I'm not so.
And I'm aware of
so
some
aware.
black couples who came. They don't come regularly, but they they did sign the book, so I'm glad to see that. All right, so what changes would you like to see in the church?
I'd like to see more of the same. I mean, more movement towards. I'd like to see more cultural events here that draw people from the community. In terms of what I've heard is as to how do we incorporate more or integrate more into the neighborhood. FUMCOG has a drama series. For a little while there, Robert Anu had some plays here. I mean, we've done some concerts. Rather, the Mennonite Meeting House now is doing a concert once every month on the third Thursdays.
Oh, really?
We did some of that for a very short period of time a few years ago. Tried to get something going on a Saturday night. That was tough because it was in the middle of the winter, first of all, and
Right.
I don't know. It was mainly folk, like a folk thing. We probably need to bring jazz or something. If we want,
Right.
if we want an African American community here, jazz is more of a way to bring that population than folk music.
Well, and I think you'd get more of the people that we would relate to with jazz than rap.
Yeah,
Yeah, we would. I think so. What do you think?
yeah. We had well. The other thing is that we don't necessarily have to do those concerts. If organizations knew that they could rent this place, I mean, we have a really nice sound system now. And it's a fairly decent venue for doing music.
Right.
If I don't know who promoted the event, but we had an ethnic high school chorus from New England sing here. I forget what it was, but it was a Eastern European chorus. and they were really good. And I think they just rented our space. Anything like that. So the one thing I would go for would be more events
Opening it up to the community
more
for
events in
events.
the sanctuary or in the assembly room, and we have parking. So
Yeah, we have good parking. Well, then you are not involved with the Ending Racism Committee, but would you like to be involved with ending racism, or do you feel that that's not something that's in your purview right now?
Well, I'm involved with the Ending Racism Committee, and as much as I've been doing all these recordings,
You have
and
been.
it's a little frustrating that I can't get my son and daughter-in-law more interested in.
Well, she's a Muslim, though, isn't she? She's practicing.
No, her mother's practicing. She's not,
Okay.
and they're not. They're just basically non-religious. They're like many other kids many other people of their age these days. They're just non-religious. They're not, or non-denominational and non-religious. My son's cousin Sandy Campbell and Yomi Abawatsu, I can never say his last name, but they're members of the church. Yomi and Sandy are more involved
Now,
here.
what is Yomi to you?
His wife is my son's cousin,
Oh, okay.
or second cousin.
Okay.
They're related. His
Well,
son.
I can get my daughter is involved.
His son Io is my grandson's Aiden's best friend.
Oh, okay.
If they don't spend 5 hours together every day, they're lonely.
Okay, that's beautiful.
So,
Well, I think my daughter is involved with my son, who is definitely UU material in the way he thinks, but he will not attend church.
yeah.
I did drag him once to the one in South Carolina, or was it Georgia, somewhere where he's living, and he was not impressed. Although I told him, go after him, get in touch with him, but it didn't work.
Well, they're also very busy.
They have a lot to do.
It's
With their children.
well, and it's not even so much their children; it's their work. They're so involved with their professional lives. They're privileged in that her mother came over from Africa to raise their first child while she worked in Jersey City, and my son was in law school in Pittsburgh. And that was their first year. The second year, it was too long of a commute between Pittsburgh and Jersey City, so my son transferred to Penn State Law School in Carlisle. But meanwhile, the mother was working at the home. Babysat 100% at home, so that Rama could work 8 o'clock in the morning to 6 o'clock at night or whatever it was. And now it's the same thing. My son has an office outside of the house. Rama's at Comcast from 8 o'clock in the morning to 6 at night. And
And also, they are very often called, because of the way the computers contact them, they get calls.
they're all the time.
They're really on call all the time.
Not just on call. They're involved with their the phones. It's distressing to me as a grandparent to see how how much time the parents are missing their kids.
Yeah, sure, because I know my daughter is, she sometimes works from home, but then they call her, if she's off that day, she'll get something on the computer. Will you please take care of this, I said, well, you're not working today. It's ridiculous. Don't you have a day off? But that's how it is. So it is a different kind of life, and they work more than 40 hours a week. Although they don't think they do, but they do.
So I don't know what I look at terms of how their kids are going to be socialized. They've got interracial family, kind of a religious differences. Their mother's practices prays 5 times a day. The mother speaks French almost exclusively. My daughter-in-law speaks English very fluently. Her sister, who is also living with them, came over from Africa 2 years ago, speaks some English. Yeah, my son doesn't speak any French at all.
But you do, don't you?
Well, I do, but they speak. It is.
Patois.
Yeah, they speak Ivory Coast French, and I can. It's laboring for me to go there. I'm not fluent in French, so if I speak, and I'm looking for words, and that's a little bit of a struggle. I would be a lot more comfortable just speaking English.
Well, I mean, you have a very interesting life going
And
on
then
there.
and then they go, and then in education is another conflict. I'd love to see them in public education. My son, except for my youngest daughter, all of my kids went through public school from
So they go to
CW.
private school.
Well, they go to a charter school. They got accepted at the Independence Charter School downtown. And they were going to go to Lingelbach. They thought about going to Lingelbach, but then when they got accepted in the lottery at the Independence Charter School, Rosie went there. And then once one child is in, the siblings can go there. So that's a bilingual school.
Right.
So they're getting Spanish
Oh.
at that school. So they'll speak English. The kids will speak English or Spanish sooner than they'll speak French.
Right. They might be trilingual. How do you know?
They'll be trilingual. They'll understand trilingual.
Right.
They're more likely to be bilingual in
Right.
speaking.
Yeah. So that's really very interesting. But what is it like for you when you take your grandchildren out? How do you in the neighborhoods when you walk? Do you ever take your grandchildren out for a walk?
Well, not as much as I would like to. But I don't notice anything. I haven't noticed anything in particular if I go to the Please Touch Museum, for example. I just haven't noticed anything one way or the other. I'm wondering how that will be when they get older. I'm wondering. For me, at this point, it's just conjecture what their life is going to be like.
Well, I'm going to
Yeah.
say it's going to be much different than it used to be.
Yeah.
Because in communities, for instance, my daughter has an interracial family. Her husband is white, and her daughter is mixed. And then they adopted a little boy from Ethiopia who's very dark. And my son-in-law takes him with him to the games all the time. They go all over to play tennis, because my little grandson is a great athlete, and my son-in-law loves that. And he goes to play tennis, and he beats everybody, and he's just wild about that. And then they go to football games together, and they just have a wonderful time. And you see them in pictures. They take pictures of him when he goes with his friends to the football game. My little grandson's right there, and we're just having a ball. And I said to my daughter, I wonder if Jared experiences any different. She said, if he did, you wouldn't know it, because they're running behind him, so I don't know.
I will say that my son bought a house in Germantown, which has been, the house itself's been around since 1848, but since the 1960s, the West Central Germantown neighborhood has been integrating. It's always been somewhat integrated, but it not as fast as Mount Airy has, or not as well recognized as Mount Airy has. So the West Central Germantown neighbors had been known more as a predominantly white
Now where
group.
is that? What street were you talking about?
The West Central Germantown neighborhood is Shelton Avenue, Germantown Avenue,
Okay.
to Johnson Street, and to Shelton, Germantown, Railroad Tracks, Johnson Street.
Okay, I know where that is. Yeah, okay.
Regardless of the population that lives in there, the homeowners have been more predominantly white than than the apartment dwellers, who are more predominantly black. And the apartment dwellers I guess, largely because of the nature of apartment dwellers, haven't been as invested in keeping the neighborhood
Right.
single family as opposed to subdivided large houses and all that. But so my point was going to be that my son bought this huge house, which has been the site of the neighborhood picnic for
Oh.
decades. And it's been interesting to see over the past few years, maybe, he's lived there now 2.5, I guess, coming on to 3 years. But before that, and definitely since then, it's been nice to see that the complexion of the general picnic has been changing to include more black folks. Now, some of those people are friends of the family, I think. But it's also interesting to see that there's more, that the neighborhood is trying very hard to bring in more of the total population that lives there.
Well, so that's the kind of thing that is going to make the change, I think. That's what's helping us to understand each other and not understand that, that we feel that, okay, Jeff's a pretty nice guy, and it's not a matter of whether he's white or black, It's what's going to make the difference, I think, in this country and in this church. So even though you're not a member of ERC, we do feel that you're working for the cause.
Well, at this point, I am not involved with any of the ongoing social action groups of the church. I have not, and I have. It's not that I have resisted, but there have been other things that have taken my time.
Right.
And I do resist getting sucked into one thing or another. I always have.
Sucked into this, Jeff, and it's just been wonderful.
Yeah, I did get sucked into it.
And we're not going to let you go. Okay,
That's
is there
okay.
anything you'd like to say about the ascendancy of the church toward anti-racism?
Yeah, I wish there was a different expression for it than that.
Really?
Yeah, the anti-racism committee just doesn't, or the anti-racism effort.
Ending
just,
racism.
Yeah, ending racism is better. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what we're doing. We're ending racism.
Yeah, and it's definitely, I remind myself, as bad as things are in the East Coast cities, when you go to to mainstream central United States of America, small town, it's people just don't know who Jews are or who black people are.
Well,
And that continues to amaze me.
well, sometimes you're accepted as being exotic, and then if more of you come, then you're accepted as being nuisance. So,
And then I imagine when Mennonites move into the neighborhood, what's that like? It's not so much neighborhood, but when they move into your state.
well, some states, I'm surprised to find the many of them who live in North Carolina. Oh, there's a whole, in fact,
Yeah, I
there's
forgot
a
about that
university in Winston-Salem. That's a Mennonite university. There are loads of
I'm
Mennonites.
thinking more of the Amish specifically than Mennonite.
Oh, okay.
Mennonites are more of mainstream than the
Yeah,
Amish.
they are.
I was thinking of Amish,
Amish, okay.
which are in
They don't
Ohio.
move around that much.
Well, they're in Ohio. I think they're moving into Montana
Really?
because of where land is available.
Oh.
I mean, there's the Amish community in Pennsylvania and Ohio can't get much bigger because there's no room.
Land,
And when you have kids, they need to have a farm.
yeah. Right.
So, or they need to go, which is what's happening. They need to go work in mainstream economy. You can be a carpenter.
Right.
You can be Amish and be a carpenter and work for the English,
Right.
because you don't have to drive a car to be a carpenter.
No, you don't. But you can drive a buggy.
And you don't have, and if you had to, you can use a battery operated tool.
Some of them had cell phones. Did you see that? I saw where some of them had cell phones. So
If you need to do it, if you need a cell phone to do your work, you don't have to take it home. You know, I mean,
Probably.
I really have a lot of respect for the Amish culture because they determine how connected they want to be.
And they let the kids go out for a year
Yeah,
to see if they want to live outside the community, and most of them come back.
we went to a farm bed and breakfast in Lancaster County. If you go to a dairy farm, Amish do dairy. Well, if you do dairy, you got to refrigerate your milk.
Right.
So they have refrigeration, and they have generators at the barn.
And they milk the cows. I was out with one in Lancaster. They milk the cows electrically too. They don't have little milkmaids sitting there.
But so you don't have to have the electric wires coming into your house. You just have it at the barn.
Right. Okay. I guess that's what they do.
Yeah. If you're a woodworker, you don't have to do everything with electricity. You can have one electric motor that ties onto belts all around, where you can have anyway. It's a whole nother culture that.
Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't want to be in that. That's kind of difficult at this time. Jeff, it's been a pleasure to talk with you. Are we finished now? Did you turn it off?
I have no idea.
It may have run out of. It may have run out of time.
Touch it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's still green. Has the red flashing mean it's not?
No, it's.
It's still recording, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure what that's indicating, but it doesn't say it's out of time. So.